Hey everybody, Todd Dammit Kerns here. Once again, brought to you by our good friends at Honer Music, makers of all kinds of amazing things. My house is filled with it, and it's going to be filled even more. Today, I'm really excited to have an old friend of mine. We back in 1997, I was in a film. I starred in a film, and this guy, who is an actor, was my co-star. He's like second or third down the list from me. Kind of alternate reality is that. He's gone on to be in amazing series like Sanctuary, all kinds of crazy things. He has a show called Pure, and he right now is in Netflix's, I believe it's CW's, Riverdale, which is a massive hit. He is the uncle. He's not one of the teenage kids, but it's an amazing role. He's an amazing dude. We've known each other for a million years. Please have a blast hanging out with two old pals. He's also a COVID survivor. That's the biggest thing we talk about. Mr. Ryan Robbins.
Now we're recording. Now it's
Well, I'll tell you what you're doing wrong. The first thing you're doing wrong is you're interviewing a Luddite. on these Zoom calls, I've been like, oh, okay, it should not. I literally just have to push a button, and I always forget to unmute myself or to, or to turn the microphone on, and I'll just start talking, and everyone's like,
I know, yeah. My friend Zach Throne says a million ways to die. When it comes to recording, all these programs and filming, there's always something. There's a button somewhere in the chain of events here, and it's like, and then there it is. And
yeah, or we'll do read-throughs for a show over Zoom, and of course, there's long periods where you're not talking, so you'll hit the mute button, and then it's your turn. You're like, oh shit, it's my turn.
But you're muted.
I can't.
Damn it. That's really got to change everything. Speaking of
Dammit,
I like it. Nobody makes it look better than you, sir.
I was actually wearing that earlier because I wear it all the time and I wasn't even thinking about it. I was like, I should take my hat off for this. Oh, it's.
And then you just realized that, yeah, there you go. Thank you. I appreciate that. You're out there. Does anybody ever say to you, my wife's had it a few times where she's been like, some old guy will be like, why do you have a curse word on your hat? Or something.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like, it's a company or whatever.
Well, because I have the motorcycle shop, I wear hats all the time, and I'll be wearing that, and just some customer will come in and be like, well, but it's like, thank God it's motorcycles. But
yeah, motorcycles usually attracts a certain class of hard rockers.
Yeah.
And
well, the best is my little one, she can read now. So.
yeah. That lends to another side of it. Damn it, Daddy, damn it. Yeah. No, let's go backwards because, we could go way backwards because you and I have known each other. If you do the math, dude, it gets pretty serious because I was thinking about it and it was
it's a lifetime.
It really is. Yeah. It's like when we think back on, well, I had kids. That's the fascinating thing with this. Whenever I talk to my friends, it's like I already had kids, but everybody else was like not married, no kids, no.
Yeah, you just had kids though.
Yeah, they were.
I babysat your kids.
I know. It's so fascinating to me. That's hilarious. How the hell did we rope you into that?
I was terrified. They were awesome.
Was it both of them?
Both of them.
Oh my God! Wow, we really
and they
stuck
stayed,
you in
but
it.
They were tiny.
Really? Wow! But they were a good time. They were always a good.
They
time.
were good times, and we had a blast. Yeah, we had a blast. It wasn't for very long because I don't know who in their right mind would leave me with their children for any length of time back in those days.
You're a pretty trustworthy guy in general, so
you guys must have been desperate.
No, we thought it's like practical jokes on our friends. Who else can we stick it to? Yeah. But
thank God your kids liked mac and cheese back then.
Exactly.
That's all I could cook.
Kids love mac and cheese. There's your which you would learn even today. Yeah. It's
still true.
And it will be 30 years from now. So there you go.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it's been like almost. If it's not 30, it's pretty damn close. 30 years.
It's got to be close. Yeah.
But but I actually, when I said rewind, I wanted to go back to the top of the pandemic, the lockdown, the thing, because you actually survived, from what I understand. I don't know how confirmed you were on that, but you actually went through this COVID. You actually
we're
rocked
unclear whether or not I survived, or were
No, I was unsure if you actually like, you know, it was actually sort of like, because I know you had it in early stages where it was kind of like, do not come to the hospital. Like they
don't come near us was what I was told, is stay away unless you're gonna die. I did end up in the hospital at some point because I stopped breathing, but
what?
It was scary, man. It was not fun. And to be completely honest, I'm still not 100%. I still have issues with my lungs, and I carry around a puffer now, just because it's just we haven't figured out what the trigger is, but certain things will like trigger like a respiratory event, and I guess there's like an anomaly in my heart because of the oxygen deprivation. I mean, I'm fine, and the prognosis is good, that everyone believes they're confident that I'll recover. And just going through this, learning more and more, knowing what we know now, it seems like a lot of people, recovery just takes a really long time. And that's one thing, like, we seem to quantify this whole COVID thing by the death toll. And it's for me though, it's like this long haul thing, the symptoms. I mean, I know people personally who have permanent heart damage. I know people personally who have permanent lung damage, or their kidneys, and people who diabetics get it and it just almost kills them, or then in cases, unfortunately, it does kill them. And so for my personal experience was awful. I remember
texting with you in the middle of it, and you were saying like the muscles and all that kind of stuff were like, it's just mental. It
was weird because it's inflammatory, so everything's fucked up, and then you get these weird rashes like on the bottom of your feet and your arms, and the sweats, and just soaking wet, and you get these really violent shakes. They were calling them rigors, and every time I heard the name Rigor, just like it's some Godzilla would fight or something,
or a Viking name or something.
Me, if I was a Viking. Rigor.
Exactly. Rigor.
It's gonna be my new
son of.
But yeah, man. But I'm just happy to be on the other side. There was a time for a long time I was saying I wouldn't wish this on anybody, and of course I would probably wish it on a couple of people, but
well, you wouldn't be human if you didn't, I suppose. But yeah, no, the fact that, very early on, like I say, and people would say, I don't know anybody that's had this. I go, I know two. Early on, yourself and another friend of ours, Brent Donnelly, he runs Kids on the Escalator, a bunch of podcasts. He's a tour manager. He's an amazing guy, but he had it coming in from Europe or something like that, from touring. As well. So it was, and both of you were in Vancouver. So I was like, what the hell's going on in Vancouver? Crazy.
Well, I had traveled as well. And
that's what it was. Yeah.
And then when I got to YVR, to the airport in Vancouver here, it just looked like a post-apocalyptic movie. It was weird. And where I had been, it just didn't, no one was really talking about it. And then I didn't know anybody. And then, you sort of become part of this COVID community online. One person reaches out, another person, then you get connected with a lot of people. So I know a lot of people now, of course, more personally than I did before, but because it's a bit of a snowflake kind of thing, in that, very few cases are completely similar. What was fascinating for me, to be honest, is I'm not a, big TV watcher, but I was following Chris Cuomo's journey on CNN because his was almost identical to mine. And around the same time, I think I was just a little ahead of him, I think it was a little ahead of him. But he had bronchitis a lot as a kid, so did I, and that's why my lungs got hit super hard. I mean, that's why I sound like I've never been a smoker, but it's why I have a gravelly voice. It's just because of.
But it makes for great for your gig, for what you do.
Sure,
it does add a certain extra
it's funny.
layer.
Back in the old days, being a teenager and singing in bands and really loving that smoky, growly, raspy voice, and I had this couple of older mentors, and I was like, man, how do you get that voice? I want that voice. And they're like, whiskey and weed, man. Whiskey and weed. I was like, all right, cool. I'll do that.
Yeah.
And there's this cut to this like 15-year-old trying whiskey for the first time, and everybody else is drinking coolers. And I was like, oh shit! Oh.
No, I think I'll stick with the voice I have, because this sounds like too much of a cost to pay.
Yeah, the voice of angels.
Yeah, but then it is a funny thing, because I mean, I'm thinking about this myself as a person who sings. It's sort of one of those things that the human voice, you know, especially in acting, I think it's such an important thing. And I'm sure you probably look back at yourself, if you do look back at yourself, and you go, what's with my voice? Or like, you know, I watch old interviews with myself, and I'm like, got the Saskatchewan accent. I'm still talking like that, you know. And I'm like, whoa, it's crazy. But your voice changes so much. But with the addition of an effect to your lungs are a huge part of your voice. Every time we get chest colds, any singer will just be like laid out, like you're done. You just barely even survive it. Yeah.
And you don't want to push it, because that's when you do damage. That's when you get the scar tissue. And yeah, it's funny you say that, because somebody just sent me last week a link on Twitter to an episode of Psych that I had done. And I watched it, and I commented on it. I showed it to my wife, and that was like, whoa, because for me, the memory of that was like just a few years ago.
Sure, yeah.
But then I look at it, and I look like a kid, and my voice is way up here. It was a stage in my it was a stage in my career where I thought like almost every character I played, I gave them this like slight New York or Boston, or at least what I thought was New York or Boston at the time, accent, because I thought it would set me apart, especially up in Vancouver. So there's this small period of time in my early career where like every role I played, I was talking like this a little bit. You know, I was saying, you know, I was like, hey, listen, I don't think you should do that. You know what I mean? Like, and I'm just like this tiny little skinny Joe Pesci thing. I don't know what that. I mean, it worked. Like I was
exactly. You worked enough that clearly, no. Otherwise, the director will stop you right away, as you know. That's What the hell are you doing?
What is it? What is that? Where? But I did get that a lot. They're like, where are you from? I was like, all over. I've lived all over. I would tell people like, you know, I lived in New York for a while. I lived in Brooklyn, which is not untrue. I just only lived there for 6 months. You know? Like, I don't know if you could say like I lived there.
You picked up an accent very quickly. It's still
very quickly.
Yeah. Yeah, because it would be like going to London and coming, hello, governor. You know, be like, that's not quite going to happen. Yeah. But
do you do that? Do you ever find yourself doing that in conversation? Because I do that if I'm having a long conversation with somebody who's got an accent. I listen so intently because I'm fascinated by the accent that I find myself slowly starting to take those affectations, and I'm like, I think, God, they must think I'm an asshole. I'm
yeah. I do that watching shows, like we've been watching Yellowstone. Kevin Costner's.
So everybody's watching Yellowstone right now.
It's great. It's fun, yeah. And after a while, I found myself starting to draw a little bit. You know, it's kinda, you know, and you're like, what the hell am I doing? Like you're just kind of like, or even especially when you're watching English shows, you can't help but kind of like, you know, start using some of their isms through it. You know, I gotta go back to my flat. You know, what are you talking about? Yeah. Where's the loo? You know, shut up. You know, but let's go backwards, because I this is what I find fascinating, because I talked to Alex Ponovic not that long ago too, and you know, we all sort of lived in the same circle back in the day when, you know, I was in a band and you guys were, well, everybody was coming up is what I was kind of saying. It's interesting to go back and look at the embryonic stages of everything when we kind of see everything, and then as time goes by and I'm watching TV and I go, dude, that's Ryan. Like whoever I'm with, I'm like, I know that guy. You know, I'm playing that game. You know, and it's so cool when you're watching a show that you dig, like Hell on Wheels or Arrow or whatever, or Smallville, or take your pick of any. The best thing about it is what an interesting time for you to decide whether you decided it or not, or whatever decision was, to go, I'm going to pursue acting in a city that's exploding at the same time with work or just opportunity. You know what I mean? Like when I really go backwards, I start to think like 21 Jump Street must have been the first sort of like, you know, back in the 80s was sort of like Vancouver. Oh, they shoot that in Vancouver. And you're like, why would they shoot that in Vancouver? And then you lead to the X-Files, you lead to all that stuff that kind of came down the line. And you even did an X-Files, right? I
did the newest version of the X-Files. I never did the original. That was like,
yeah, you were like, that was, but they kind of wrapped that up before we kind of all started getting into that, didn't they?
Yeah, I got a later start in the acting business because I was in the band and we were touring and doing all that stuff. And then so I missed out on that. But one of my early gigs was Millennium, which was a Chris Carter show with Lance Henriksen, who was amazing. And then having since done conventions with Lance.
Oh wow, that's so cool.
There's this great. One of my favorite convention stories is in the green room, and there's all these like Star Trek cast, and then there's Lance Henriksen, and there's Michael Rooker, and I'm always feeling out of place because I'm so starstruck. I'm always like such a nerd, and but I play it cool, and then they have the table with all the food and the beverages and stuff laid out for us, and they have this gluten-free section, and this is 10 years ago. And Lance Henriksen and Michael Rooker just standing over the gluten-free section for like an extended period of time. And finally, Rooker goes, "Now, what the fuck is gluten? And why do I want to be free of it?" And,
wow.
I just died. I was like, this is the best. This is the best.
Rooker and Henriksen.
I don't remember what, but then just watching the two of them debate over gluten.
That's hilarious.
It was amazing.
Yeah, it's funny to go backwards on that too, because you're another guy who was playing in bands in the club days when I was playing in bands in the club days. So, and it's an interesting transition. So is music the first thing that grabs you? You grew up where? Where did you grow up? Let's go back to that.
I grew up on Vancouver Island. I grew up
on the island,
in Victoria, and then I vividly remember the day I decided I wanted to be an actor. It was when I was 12 years old on the playground, and everybody was talking about all the things they wanted to be when they grew up, and I couldn't decide. I was like, I want to be an astronaut. I want to be a firefighter. I want to be. Superhero. I thought I was gonna. I thought I was all these things, and then all of a sudden I had this bizarre epiphany. I was like, wait a second. If I became an actor, I can be all those things.
That's true. That's true. Wow.
And then that just stuck with me. And then my mom was a singer, and I was playing in a band as you do, like in high school, and I was writing the song. I always wrote, and I still write it like incessantly. I'm constantly writing, and I was writing and I was playing drums and writing, and then just couldn't find a singer, and then I graduated towards the bass. I started playing bass. You still wouldn't having trouble with the singer, and then my buddy was like, "Why don't you just sing?" But I couldn't sing and play at the same time because I was awful at all the things. And I started, so I started singing, and then and then I was when I started playing live, I had such stage fright. I would just create characters for myself, and then that became, I loved the performing aspect of it. Like I loved performing. I miss playing music live. There's just nothing like it. Like theater was fun. I did a bit of theater and it was fun, but it's nothing compared to music. It's nothing compared to that direct connection between yourself and the audience. Like it's a communal experience. It's not us and them, it's not us versus them. It's us and them. It's like you become this one massive human entity, and I can't until you've done it, you can't explain it. And I miss that a lot. And it was fun. And then when I was in Helen Keller,
the band,
we sort of
the Vancouver
band.
Yeah.
Yes, I was never actually in Helen.
That's just a whole
story.
That's another conversation. Yeah.
So I was in a band called Helen Keller. We had a good sort of local run. We had a good it
was great, man. We loved coming to see you guys play. It was always an experience because it was like a soundtrack to some movie that wasn't playing at that moment. It was the movie in your head, because there was nothing pop about it. There was nothing like 3 minute sort of pop songs or verse chorus. It was soundscapes, and you were wearing devil horns or painted red or some crazy thing, and it'd be like, what is happening in here? But it was the 90s and the early 2000s were a beautiful experimental time with music, and Vancouver was a hotbed of that too, I thought.
Well, we were so influenced by like Pink Floyd and Tom Waits. That's why I would make all these crazy, wacky instruments. And then later, like guys like Mickey Hart and John Zorn and like these eclectic, you know, groups. And we were sort of godfathered by Skinny Puppy, and they took us under their wing. And there's nothing like, you know, Kevin Key, 7 feet tall with dreadlocks in the very front row of an audience to get people pretty hyped. And
yeah, absolutely, yeah.
That was an incredible time. And then it was finally coming back around to where you were getting. It was because of that band that I met a certain filmmaker who was also an acting teacher, and
the one that brought us together.
Put you and I in a movie together.
Yes, let's talk about Kirsten Clarkson, because Kirsten was like, I don't know how it worked for you. Here's me. For those that don't know, a little conjecture and backstory is exposition, perhaps.
Yes.
I don't know what any of these words mean. I just say stuff, try to pretend I'm smart. But Ryan and myself were both in a film called Horsey, which is still, it's so funny because when I was going through your resume, I go, there it is, Horsey, your first one. And I'm like, I was literally walking through Shoppers Drug Mart on Davie Street, you know, just with I think we had one baby at the time. And this woman walks up to me and goes, have you ever acted? And I go, you know, just kind of like, you know, I was in a band and we were reasonably popular. So that sometimes did happen. We had videos on Much Music and the Canadian MTV, and, you know, so that kind of happened sometimes. But when someone just kind of ran as well, they don't know, she didn't know who I was. She didn't care that I was in a band or whatever. It was just sort of like, who are you? You know, have you ever acted? And I'm like, no, which I always find amusing. And I don't mean to belittle it. And I think in my mind, I've sort of made it shrink down to being sort of mildly kind of like, they looked for a black-haired guy with tattoos, and that's a black-haired guy with tattoos. You know what I mean? It's kind of like one of those things. But I really, you know, there's a lot of things I regret in a funny way. I don't regret a lot about my life or about my career, but there was a period where like that kind of came along. I went down and I read with Justine Priestley, Jason's sister. And this was just in the very embryonic stages, you know what I mean? And got the part, whatever that means. It felt like a year, maybe 2 years before it actually kind of became what it became. And I was so a musician, and still, as you know, I am still a musician. So I obviously stayed on that path, but it did create a lot of opportunities, of which I was just too, because I've always said this, and I don't mean to take over all your time with me babbling away, but
no.
Whenever somebody lays something that's terrifying on you, or not terrifying, but just awkward, like you think like, I'm not an actor. I always thought to myself, well, I should do that then. I should jump in and see what it feels like. Sure. And I kind of thought, well, I prefer doing this music thing. So I just kept going that way. Where guys like you and Al Ponovic, for that matter, when this opportunity sort of presented itself, you kind of already had that. And I think you were so good. I think you were so good at, you know, creating these characters within Helen Keller and creating these characters for going on stage. Because being in a band and being a musician is often a character anyway. You walk on stage, you kind of have to, whether you're pretending to be Paul Stanley or, you know, Tom Waits, it doesn't matter. You get up there and you do your thing. So how did it go for you? How did Kirsten find you?
Well, first of all, I think you shouldn't sell yourself short, because you can't teach charisma, and you have always had that in spades.
Well, thank you.
Charisma and kindness.
Well,
you know, and those two don't often go hand in hand.
Let's keep going on this theme.
No, because I remember when you got the job, and of course I think we knew each other peripherally from the scene and stuff, and then and I just thought, Jesus, why? How can one man be this good looking? This is not fair. I gotta act with this fucking guy. Come on.
Oh, come on.
So with me, it was one of the only skills I had. It's one of the only things I had trained for. I had studied acting. I had done that when I was young. I was in an arts-oriented high school that had a really progressive theater program. There was a regular theater program, and there was one that they would only take 12 students a year that you had to audition for. That was, you got treated like a professional theater company. And I was fortunate enough to be part of that. And my teacher then was a wonderful human named Drew Kemp, who changed my life. I wouldn't be doing this if it wasn't for him. So while I was in Helen Keller and we were playing to bigger and bigger audiences, and I was wrestling with my stage fright a little bit, I started taking acting classes, and I studied. It was a place called Studio on the Drive, and Kristen Clarkson was the teacher. There was the main teacher there.
That's right.
And I look back now, and I just look at, like, you know, the roster of students she had back then. There's so many that are still killing it in the business.
I know.
And it helped me a lot. She really brought me sort of out of my shell. I was very shy, very insecure kid, and then I just went the opposite way, and that's when the pink satin ball gowns and all the dresses and all the crazy
tutu, whatever.
Yeah, like whatever. It was just like
kilt. There was a big kilt phase. I remember that.
There was a kilt phase. You had the kilt and the combat boots, and then the next thing I know, I was like modeling fetish gear, and I was like a fetish model, and then they would just give me stuff to wear.
That was just for me. That was just for me to be fair.
Yeah, that's true.
Just kidding.
But things were going crazy, and I just found this like place of grounding in acting class, and I think that's where I met Holly.
Mm-hmm.
That's where I met the homie, and then and a bunch of cool people, Dylan Akio Smith, and then Kristen had this script, and the role was originally written for somebody else, and then I don't know what happened, and she's like, "Do you want to read for this?" And then one thing led to another, and then there we were making this movie. And it's crazy because you remember Glenn Winter, who shot it, who's now like,
he's huge.
He's the go-to. He's like one of the go-to directors on all the CW shows.
I had dinner with him in LA once. He was down there just when they were getting ready to unleash Supergirl. So Glenn Winter was the DOP, the director of photography on Horsey. And he went, and then I would see his name on Smallville. And then he became bigger and bigger in that CW world of superhero stuff. And it was amazing to see him, and amazing to see. I mean, he's obviously was very talented back then. It was really interesting to see because in a production like Horsey, for those that don't know, it wasn't a multi-million-dollar thing. It was an independent throw and go in many occasions.
It was barely a multi-dollar thing.
Well, was that your first experience on set?
Yeah.
Wow, how do you like that? So you and I shared our first on-set experience. Wow.
Yeah, because it was Horsey that got me my first agent. I didn't have an agent. I didn't have any representation. And then I ended up with this agent who really didn't know me at all. And I got my first gig was a show called Cold Squad. Then my second gig was Millennium. And
that's a pretty good second gig, dude.
Yeah. And going back to this whole
on Fox, that was a major show at the time. Yeah.
And I was such a huge Lance Henriksen fan. I was over the moon. But going back to this voice of mine, she just assumed I was a smoker. And there was a scene where my character has to French inhale, and I wasn't. I've never been a smoker. And so I get on the day, and I'm like, what? And I phoned her. I was like, I don't smoke. She's like, well, figure it out. And I was like, I don't know. So I'm panicked. I'm trying to do the thing. And the director's like, you don't smoke, do you? I was like, no. He's like, all right, come with me.
You're doing this thing. Yeah.
Oh my God, man. He took me outside and he made me smoke and smoke. I felt like you hear those stories of those kids whose parents catch them smoking and they make them smoke a whole pack in the closet or whatever. And he made me smoke and learn to French inhale. And I was just like, I don't know how they got the shot. I did it. I don't know how they got the shot. My skin was green. It was awful. And
is this like a real cigarette or like some sort of like
well, it started with those herbal ones, but they don't create the same smoke as a real cigarette. Right. So I ended up having to do real cigarettes, and I was just like buzzing, and it was crazy. So I got a new agent shortly after that.
Okay.
And then everything.
And I never smoked again. Yeah.
No.
It's funny because I mean it's amazing watching this kind of like, it's like Horsey, Kristen sort of put us in this sort of garage band, and it sort of springboard a lot of people into stuff. I don't know it was that and a million things that led Glenn Winter to where he is. But a lot of people went on to do stuff, and to watch you sort of go from that independent throw and go, which I'm sure you learned a million things from as you were doing it. Maybe learn some what not to do even, which I think is just as important. But once you
go do indies. I still do indies. I just shot an indie. I love them. I get such a kick out of doing that. When there's no money involved, the heart has to be. So
absolutely,
it's a great time. So anyway.
So when you get into the scene, and what I find really interesting is when you get into you do get an agent, you start getting out there and getting seen, and you're working a little bit, so you get to build up your resume, and it might be brief little things here and there, but it starts to, how long does it take before people go, oh, Ryan, is there casting direct? How many casting directors are you really dealing with in a town like Vancouver? I'm asking just out of complete ignorance of how this works.
Well, back then there was a handful of like the main ones.
Okay.
And it took the band firing me for me to get serious about acting.
Were you fired because you were having trouble committing because of all your silly acting?
No, I don't know. That was weird. It's still like this weird. I'm still not sure exactly why I was fired.
It doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. Yeah. The point is, I'm still very good friends with Rich Walters. And Rich Walters from Helen Keller is now a very incredibly successful composer for film and television. He co-composed Chappie with Hans Zimmer.
Oh wow, is that really? I'm not surprised because of the music you guys were making that he would.
Yeah, and Rich he's a multi-instrumentalist. And so Rich and I still play music together. We still write together. So
awesome. That's great.
So. What was the question?
Casting directors. I just kind of was curious. How long does it take? How long did you feel like when you were going out to these things before people went like, because eventually it becomes like, call Ryan Robbins or see this Ryan Robbins guy. I think that clearly that's where you are now. I really feel like when people talk within the Vancouver community, there's a handful of people or maybe a decent sized list, but you're on that list. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah. Well, thanks. I mean, it's great. It's great to be at that to be at a point where I'm at now. But I just love working. I just want to work. I want to work all the time. Course, I don't want to retire. I want to do this forever. There was a casting director who I have great affection for, who was a real character back in the day. He's retired now. And my agent at the time had written a letter saying, listen, why don't you, how come we won't see Ryan for this? Why don't you see Ryan for this? He goes, I don't think he's a very interesting actor. I don't find him very interesting. And
Ouch.
I said, you tell him to bring me in for something interesting then. Because he was bringing me in for one line, two lines. Like, he went that way, or I don't know. Like he's like, and how
much does that pay? And how, I could make an entire career just doing that. I don't know.
You make $500 in a day to say, I don't know.
There you go. Perfect.
I said, tell him to bring me in for something interesting then. Like, even if he's not even considering casting me, like, let me audition for something interesting. Let me audition for something bigger then. I'll show him. And he, to his credit, he did. And then he wrote me the nicest letter.
Wow.
About how he underestimated me, and that he'll never underestimate someone again, or something. It was wonderful. It was so encouraging and so soul fulfilling, because this industry, the entertainment industry is soul sucking a lot of times. It's, when with music, you're putting your heart and soul out there to be judged. It's a crazy thing that we do. And acting is not dissimilar, except that it's somebody else's words at stake, not mine.
Right.
And I'm not being me. Like, the hardest part about this is these interviews. With you, it's we've been friends for forever.
I hate calling these interviews. This is a chat. This is just
it's a chat.
Bros hang.
But being myself is still the hardest part of this job. Like, I love being somebody else. But that really was empowering for me. The fact that he let me do that. And then the other casting director, who I will mention by name because I love her to pieces too. Her name is Maureen Webb, and she's still a casting director, and I'm still crazy about this woman because she did me the biggest favor of my career. I was going through a rough patch in my life, and my marriage then, that marriage was failing, and I had a kid and I was struggling and things were just not good. And this series came up and I read for this part and I didn't get it. And then she still really wanted me to work. She was really supportive of me. She brought me back she wanted to bring me back for a different character. And I was like, I really want that one though. Like, that character, the guy speaks to me. And she said, I'm going to bring you back in one more time for that character. You cannot bring your bullshit into the room anymore. Whatever's going on in your life, you leave that outside. When you come in here, you put on your game face and you go to work, because nobody wants to work with that fucking guy.
Wow.
They're going to hand you their baby, and they want to know that A, you're going to take care of their baby, and B, when you give it back to them, maybe their baby's learned a thing or two and it's a little bit better for having spent time with you. And it just was like, because she meant so much to me, it resonated really hard. And I was like, oh, fuck, okay. And that was like a lesson I needed that I didn't know I needed. And then I got the part. So I did this TV series for 3 years.
Which one was that?
It was a Canadian series about Coast Guard. It was called The Guard.
Okay.
It was originally called Search and Rescue. And we would joke when we were filming the first season, it was called Search and Rescue, but they had such a small budget, they could never film the rescue. So we affectionately called it Search and Talk About It.
Wow, that was tough, or whatever.
Man, I can't believe you almost drowned there. That was crazy.
That's hilarious. No, but I think that's really interesting, because there's all those little, posts along the way that really kind of like, no matter what you do. I mean, I would imagine if we had gotten regular jobs, there's still going to be ups and downs and peaks and valleys. But it's interesting when you have to really kind of, that moment there was important. And then this moment here and this moment here that really kind of keeps you.
Because look, early in my career, my characters were called seedy guy, sketchy dude, punk rock guy. Like I played band members for a long chunk of time.
Yeah.
And I just went into wearing my own clothes or whatever it was. And then, and gradually I was like, I gotta change that. I was doing this movie, what was it called? Sean William Scott movie, and Dave Foley was in it. God, I love Dave Foley.
He's
so
the
much.
best.
And
Kids in the Hall. Yeah.
Kids in the Hall, Dave Foley. And he doesn't mince words, and he doesn't suffer fools, and he says what's on his mind, and I appreciate it. But he's also a lot of fun. And he was like, how does your character not have a name? I was like, I don't know. I'm gonna give you a name. I'm gonna make them give you a name. And it was like I was playing like Scrawny Meth Head or whatever it was.
That's a good name. I don't know.
Yeah. There's good band names in there somewhere. So he's the scene where he's a cop and he's arresting me. He arrests me and he's cuffing me and he's like, "We got you this time, Mallory."
That's hilarious.
And I was like, "Hey, cut, great, good." I was like, "Mallory? You were going with Mallory?" He's like, "Do you want to be guy number 4 for the rest of your life? You're going to be Mallory."
Now, is that a last name, a first name? It's so
didn't matter.
Raises so many questions.
Matter.
Yeah.
Didn't matter. I just kept thinking of wasn't that Justine Bateman's name in Family Tie?
100%. Yeah, that's the only Mallory that comes to mind. Mallory. Yeah. So what's interesting to me, and I think what's really funny is you're another one of those guys that's I'm a musician. My backup plan is going to be something just as insane. It's like I'm going to put on a cape and fight people at night. It's like that's not you. The fact that you kind of fell into acting was almost kind of like, well, not fell into it, but you kind of always had a passion for it. The fact that you've been able to turn it into a career is it just shows how blessed you are, and how and how really honestly ambitious and hardworking and skilled you are at it. Because what's really interesting to me is, it's Vancouver's one of those towns. First of all, it's not cheap to live in Vancouver.
No.
And to make a living at it. How long did it take before that became your sole thing? I know what's interesting to me is, and I'm sorry to bounce around like this, because I want to know how long it takes for you to get into something where it's like long-term work. Like Sanctuary went on for years, the series, and Battlestar Galactica was, a pretty good chapter. And then that must be, you must get a lot of love for that kind of stuff from the people that know. They must go, But when that stuff starts to happen, and you're like, basically you're so busy, you can't go to your bartending job or whatever it was that you had to do on the side. When does that start to become part of your life where you're just an actor?
It was one of the only commercials I've ever done, and it was for Molson Canadian.
Oh,
I did a Molson Canadian commercial, and back then residuals were really good.
wow.
And I was able to quit my job.
Good for you.
I did. So then I worked for a few years, and then I had to go back to a job for a minute.
Mm-hmm.
And then it was probably would have been Sanctuary that got me. And yeah, and you know, I've been really, really lucky. I mean, it's been tough times, you know, lately for everybody, but yeah, I've been really lucky to be 20 plus years in this business.
Well, that's why, you know, even in acting, a lot of people supplement their stuff with, they teach, you know, there's a whole other side of things you could get into.
Yeah, I can't teach. I mean, I've coached a little. It's just not, I don't know how I do this. I don't know what my process is. And when I did the Manson movie, I played Charles Manson, and I realized then that my process is probably not the healthiest.
I was going to say, like, yeah.
I wouldn't really recommend the way I act to other people. But I don't have a skill set. I'm not qualified to do anything at all.
Well, me either. So yes, this is it.
It's this or bust. You know, I don't have a retirement plan. I don't know. I remember when I was a kid, I watched Eddie Murphy being interviewed by Arsenio Hall. And Arsenio said, "What was your backup plan? Like if comedy or acting stuff didn't work?" He goes, "I didn't give myself a backup plan because I figured that would give me something to back up to."
Yeah.
Or he said fallback plan. I didn't give myself a fallback plan because that would give me something to fall back on. I was like, great, no fallback plan. And then there I am. I was homeless. Living on the streets of Vancouver, homeless.
When I met you, I think there was a bit of that going on. Yeah.
Like when I first met you, I was homeless, and then Graham Tucson and I lived in a condemned house, boarded up windows.
Just basically squatting then. Yeah.
We were 100% squatting, and then it was being used as a jam house, like, so it was a rehearsal space.
Was that up on Clark Drive or something, like East Vancouver? Yeah, I remember that house. Yeah.
And it was nothing like trying to get some sleep, and then like 3 o'clock in the morning, some band decides to show up in the earth. And like, but it had running cold water, and it still had electricity. So that's how we were able to.
Perfect. Yeah, well, would have to because all the bands have to plug in and play. So yeah, there you go.
Yeah, and so then we would be there, and that's where, like, you know, Brundlefly was rehearsing there, and there was some
legendary.
Oh God, there's some
Vancouver bands.
Legendary bands were legendary performers were playing there. And yeah, but I remember, like, before Graham picked me up and said, "Come live with me,"
dusted you off.
Yeah. I was like, "Fuck you, Eddie Murphy! No fallback plan. What a horrible idea. This is terrible."
Yeah, but the truth is if you had some skill like accounting or whatever, that probably would have been the moment you would have fallen into that, and that would have been the end of the story. You know, I mean, the fact that the whole intention of me trying to talk to my friends like this, and I'm lucky enough to know guys like you who are doing something that I don't understand. You know, I mean, not that I understand anything. It's the music industry, showbiz in general is so, you know, you just throw your caution to the wind and just jump in with both feet and see what happens. Is the fact that you can put your whole heart and soul into something, and one day you're, you know, squatting in a band jam house, and then years later you're homeowner and you have family and you know, all that kind of, and you know, have a very serious career and a very serious living doing it. I think that a lot of that has to do with a passion, ambition, and a belief in yourself. Because what's interesting about being in a band, and I think that you can contest to this, how different is it for you when you're in a band, you're 5 guys, however many guys it is, and then all of a sudden it's about you. Acting is about you pursuing your thing, pursuing your career and all that kind of stuff. Does that change? That must change your head entirely.
Yeah, like when I left the band, because I thought music was that was it. Like that was going to be my path. That was going to be my life. When I left the band, I realized, like, oh, other than my mouth, like my voice, I really am not very skilled at this. Like, I don't really play guitar particularly well. I played a lot of like bizarre, weird, eclectic instruments like didgeridoos and theremins and trumpets and clarinets. And like, I play instruments, but nothing that you can write on.
Right.
And I was like, oh shit. So I had to learn to play the guitar. So I started doing spoken word, just because I still needed to be on stage. And I still wanted to use my instrument. And then it just sort of was like, trying to find myself musically is what bizarrely led me back into the indie film world and back into, it was just the performance of it all. And then, you know, I tell you what you're saying, like, this is one of the coolest, I think for me, is a great example of our journey that I love deeply. I remember my favorite scene when we were filming Horsey was you and I sitting on a side of like on a curb, and we were wearing each other's real life band t-shirts.
That's right.
So you were wearing my band t-shirt. I was wearing your band t-shirt with, and I don't know, did Scully design your guys' t-shirts back then? Because I know he designed ours.
Very possible.
I know he had done some logos for you, so that was cool. And then, you know, fast forward a million years, and we're both working in Australia.
I know. That was really crazy.
We were in Sydney, right? I think we saw each other.
Yeah, you were there for a sci-fi convention because of Sanctuary and all that kind of stuff, and I was there playing. I guess
you were there. You were there playing. You were with I think you were with Slash and the fellows down there.
And I know we were both like,
how cool is this?
We were both like, how is this happening? Yeah, it's so strange, but
how cool was that though to be like, you know, all those years later, like, and of all the places, just sort of randomly finding each other, you know, on the other side of the world.
And the ability to still be doing this nonsense all these years later is kind of like, because I don't know about you, but at any moment I'm waiting for that tap in the shoulder, like, you're done. Okay, I've had a good one. You know?
And I have to stop myself from psyching myself out now too, because, you know, as the years go on, you start to feel like, oh God, maybe that window is just closing, you know. And I gotta talk.
I don't think so, man. Like, just objectively watching you do your thing, it seems to, if anything, be widening. And I think that's an exciting thing. And we've talked a lot about so much, but not a lot about what you're doing. And I think that's kind of something we should get into, because when you talk about Sanctuary, which was a huge, in an underground sense, sci-fi series that went on for, how long were you on that thing?
We ran, like, I think it was 4 seasons, but it was about 5 years.
Wow, it feels like it was 7 to me, but yeah.
Yeah, well, we were like one of the first ever web series.
That's right. Yeah.
We actually won a Guinness Book of World Record for Sanctuary for the first season. Because the first time we did it was a web series, and that was groundbreaking at the time.
That's right.
And we were all like, I thought like, oh God, a web series, is this the end of my career?
Back then you'd be like, what the hell is that? Yeah.
Oh, but then it got picked up to the series, and it's you know, one of the greatest, you know, times of my life. Yeah, certainly my career.
I'm sure people on the street, when they recognize you, often it has to be that. I mean, the fans of that show are pretty fervent about that show, aren't they? Yeah.
I mean, yes, Sanctuary is a big one. Sanctuary is one, like, if you were a Sanctuary fan, you still are a Sanctuary fan.
Sure.
You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
I miss it. I mean, I miss, you know, someone mentioned my character's name was Henry on the show. And I do miss being that guy. He was something. I mean, he wasn't me, but, you know, there's something about him that I loved. And the fact that, like, he was, you know, what we called a hap. He was a werewolf. We called it a hap, which is a hyper-accelerated protean.
I like it.
And but he was a werewolf, and I've been obsessed and fascinated with werewolves my whole life. And in the web series, you know, there's a scene with Robin Dunn, who plays Will, and he comes up to me and starts to ask me, you know, are you like something, like, and I barked at him and he scared him, and I was like, no, I'm just kidding. I'm just human. And then when I talked to them, they're like, what was that? And I was like, oh, in my mind, I like the idea that he's secretly a werewolf.
Yeah.
Like, oh, so then when we went to the series, they're like, surprise.
That's hilarious.
We thought about it. We're like, yeah, let's make him. And so, you know, I'm obsessed with, I still to this day, I'm obsessed with wolves. I'm obsessed with the idea of werewolves. I love it. And so it's kind of a great honor to have played a television one. And, you know, Seth Green is this great thing. So if you get to, Seth is an incredible, wonderful human being, one of the kindest humans on the planet, and a guy that I continually learn from. I think he's just a wonderful, wonderful man. But there's this, the werewolves, the TV werewolves, you know, there's this, you kind of all know each other in a weird way. We sort of all know who each other is, and when you bump into each other, you have to take that selfie. Like you have to. Just
That's
like it's
hilarious.
Just like, and Seth is kind of like, he's like the godfather of the TV werewolves. You know, Oz kind of he kind of sort of tops the pyramid. He's also the one that brings us all together because he knows each one of us.
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah, that's crazy.
You know, so it's kind of a funny little subcommunity that we all actually get a kick out of. Still, like I still get the kick out of.
I bet. Yeah, that's great. So when you do like say something like Battlestar Galactica, the funny thing about Battlestar Galactica is that you appear in like 2 or 3 different parts during the course of that run.
Yeah.
And Battlestar Galactica was massive for me. Like, and what you people that are into that show were into it. You know what I mean? It started off with like the reboot. Ronald Moore rebooted that thing, so it was kind of like Starbucks a girl now. When it's first presented to you, you're like, this sounds like a disaster. You know, but then you're like 1 episode in, and you're like, going, oh, okay. And 2 episodes, by the second, third episodes, you're like in. Like, and I was in for the entire journey. But that was one of the ones where I was like, I'm really into the show. I'm really crazy about this thing. And now my friend Ryan that's him right there. He's in the show. I was like, it was such one of those great moments where I was like, wow, that's so cool.
Yeah, that's one of those shows where, you know, I kept moving to Los Angeles because that's what you're supposed to do.
Right.
And I go to Los Angeles and then I book a job in Vancouver. And so I'll come back to Vancouver. And then I go back to, I have never once worked in Los Angeles.
Funny, right?
And I lived there off and on for 15 years. And so I was down in Los Angeles when they were doing some of the first auditions for Battlestar Galactica. And I'd missed out on them. On the main auditions because I was in transit. Then I came back to Vancouver for another job, and I worked with the casting directors as an audition reader.
Oh wow!
Which is this like side hustle I had, and I loved it because I learned so much from doing that. I would recommend it to any young actor if you can get a job as an audition reader. It's the lessons are invaluable. So I was the reader, and Michael Reimer, who is the director, we just clicked and we got along, and I'm reading with all these people who were coming in, and I was also the audition reader for Snakes on a Plane, by the way.
I'm putting that number 1 on your resume right now.
Yeah, I auditioned Taylor Kitsch.
That's amazing.
So anyway, this role kind of came up, and Reimer was like, "You want to just do it? You want to play the old guy?" I was like, "I want to play an old guy." And he's like, "No. What we're going to do is we're going to shoot it over 40 years. We're going to shoot a decade at a time. So we'll start you now, and then we'll slowly age you." Well, in the miniseries, you only saw me as the old man because they only used that bit.
Right.
So, you know, I'm the first person you see in the miniseries. Chronologically, I'm the first person that made out with number 6.
There you go.
Saying,
Yeah.
and then it was such a wonderful experience, and Michael Reimer is just such a gentleman and he's a great mentor. We just kept hanging out. And Aaron Douglas and I were really tight back in those days, and he of course played the chief on the show. And then we just be like, Reimer just kept saying like, well, we're gonna bring you back. We're gonna bring you back. I was like, yeah. He's like, I just don't want to bring you back and kill you, so I'm gonna try to find a role. And they did.
Well, that didn't work out so well.
Well, eventually that guy was.
Your guy had to go.
I never died.
Well, no, that's true. Yeah.
I just went away. I just disappeared. I guess you see, it got funny because they would bring me in all the time, and like there were scenes where 1 minute I'm like throwing people out the airlock, and then a couple episodes later I'm bartending, and it was like I don't know. It was such a blast, and I was such a massive fan of the show.
Me too. Yeah.
To be on a show that I was obsessed with was just that's a gift. Like, and it's rare. Like, I mean, I'm always like, there's no shows you really like, but like,
yeah, of course, yeah.
To be like obsessed with a show, you know, like Battlestar Galactica, obsessed. I was obsessed. I still think it stands up. I still think socially, politically,
it's the
relevant
benchmark.
And
of that whole new wave of sci-fi. Everybody looks to Ronald D. Moore and that Battlestar Galactica.
Especially when you think of the time, you know, the time that
Post
show was
9/11.
airing. Yeah, and they made our guys the suicide bombers.
That's right. Yeah,
which was like
the terrorists, essentially. Yeah,
they made which now, you know, talk about relevance, like just the world now. It's like, it's crazy, right? Like,
yeah, it is. Yeah.
It was like almost, I don't know, I don't want to use the word prophetic, but it was like,
but it was ahead of the curve,
like,
for sure. Yeah,
it was bold. That was bold.
It was really bold. Yeah, I think that's
and also
why, so.
for the network Sci-Fi at the time to go with it, like, they were taking huge risks back then. They were taking big risks back then, and then I guess they just, I don't know, they stopped. And you know, and Edward James Olmos is what a number one to be.
Just a legend. What a legend, yeah.
To just watch that guy navigate a film set, and each, you know, he treats everyone as an individual. He doesn't lump people together. Like, you learn a lot. I mean, for me, I think between Edward James Olmos, Amanda Tapping, and Noah Wiley, those three are top as far as number ones on a show. And
that's an important lesson to learn, because now that you are in several situations where you're number one on the call sheet, you have to set the tone of, like, you know, and I don't know how you do it, but I assume, knowing you, that you probably know the camera guy's name and you know the boom operator's name. I just know you well enough to know that you're probably a decent guy to work for.
I certainly try. I pride myself on, I want to be an example of, like, a hardworking, you know, I want a positive film set. I want a good vibe. You know, when we shot Pure, you know, it was really important to me to set certain precedents. You know, there's something that Noah Wiley always did. Noah's a good friend, and I have great admiration for him. But when we did Falling Skies, the amount of scenes that man was in, and the dialogue and the speeches, you know, and rarely, if ever, did he have his sides in his hand. You know, sides are when you go to block a scene, you have the pages for each scene, and you carry them around with you, because you finish the scene, then suddenly you're right into the next scene, and you're blocking it. So,
and it's often not chronological either. So where am I in?
It rarely is chronological. Yeah. So you're like, okay, what scene is this? And these are my lines. So, right. So you've looked them over, but now you got to rehearse, and then you learn them real quick, and then you shoot the scene. Well, I rarely, if ever, saw him with those in his hand. We just go to block the next scene, and he just knew the dialogue. And there were even times where another actor couldn't remember their lines, and he knew their lines. And I thought, that's a heavy bar.
Yeah.
I mean, I suppose, you know, 100 seasons of VR will help with that, but, you know, I just thought, I loved that. I really admired that. And so I like to try to do that. I mean, I'm not as proficient as I'd like to be, but just those little things where if I'm ready to go, then you should be ready to go.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
I also pride myself on, like, you know, I don't want a Friday to turn into a Fraturday because of me. I don't want to be keeping a crew away from their home and families late at night on a Friday. So, but that's been also a curse. Like on Sanctuary, you know, the last two scenes of every Friday were usually just me and Technobabble, because I would pride myself on one or two takes and let's get everybody home. And I made the mistake of mentioning that to Martin Wood, who thought it would be really fun to challenge me pretty much every Friday with these, like, Technobabble monologues.
Oh, God.
Try to, like, okay, well, let's see, let's give them this one on a Friday. You know,
God.
So at least that's what it felt.
Which is a lot of nonsense that you probably don't really know what you're talking about. You're just saying some techno stuff that, you know.
I remember at a table read, we were reading the thing, and I went, Jesus Christ, who talks like this? These words are not even real words. Like, who talks like this? And Amanda Tapping just looks at me and she goes, 10 years, Ryro. 10 years. Because that was her on Stargate, right? She was the one with all the Technobabble on Stargate. Exactly. So I never complained again.
No, of course.
I probably did. Not in front of Amanda.
Well, let's bounce forward, because I've taken up enough of your time, but I want to get more into what you're doing now. So Pure is this really cool, a little Breaking Bad, a little Sopranos. It has all these elements in it because it's, for those who don't, it's on Hulu, so you should check it out. But it's a Canadian-based show, and you are essentially what I think the world would refer to as Amish, Mennonite. Yeah, it's different communities that live in these sort of like 1800s kind of mentalities, and somehow you get caught up in a in a very unfortunate, there's drugs and cartel type stuff going on, and somehow it's really interesting to watch because I'm like, how are they going to make this world how are these two worlds going to collide? And the way it happens, you're like, yeah, okay. You're like, well, there it is. Yeah. And it's based in the show. Is it based in Canada?
It's based in Canada, the US, and Mexico. So
that's right. It's kind of all over.
It's based on the actual events of what the media dubbed the Mennonite Mafia, the Mennonite mob. There was a drug trafficking from Mexico up through the US into Canada, or from Mexico to Canada down to the US.
And it was meant to be, but it's meant to be in like Ontario, like around the Toronto area for those.
Yeah, we set it in a fictional town of Antioch, Ontario. Okay. And we shot that in Nova Scotia.
Which is far east.
Yes. Far east, and amazing. If you want to visit Canada, that's an essential.
Amazing people out there too. Yeah.
Unbelievable. Yeah. I miss it very much. Mm-hmm. So I play a Mennonite pastor who discovers that there's drugs in his community, so he just wants the drugs out, and
course, as you do,
and it's because the Anabaptist communities, it's like Mennonites, Hutterites, Quakers, Amish, it goes on and on. Yeah. Basically they were they live traditionally a very simple life, and nothing flashy, nothing fancy. They take the 7 deadly sins incredibly literal.
Yeah. How much research do you need to do into something like this? Did you actually spend time in these communities or with people, or how does this work?
At the time, I didn't have access. I didn't know how to gain access.
Well, they're not really open to like just outsiders coming in, and like, hey.
Right. And since the first season, of course, I got to know more people within the communities, and I learned even more. But we had a Mennonite advisor. It's not like the language, this Plattdutch or this Low German language that we had to speak doesn't really exist in recorded history. So you have to learn it from a Mennonite.
Wow.
So that was tricky. And then there's this tricky sort of accent, and I would go to the local markets because there'd be these Mennonites selling produce, and I would ask, they must have thought I was just so stupid. I was like, I wanted them to say words, and they were very quiet.
How much are these eggs?
Yeah. I was like, so what do you call that there? She's like, cucumber. Yeah. Well, yeah. What and that there, lettuce. I want to say,
and you're like,
put it in a sentence.
Very intensely, like listening, like.
Yeah, what am I going to say? Like, listen, I'm playing So anyway, so he finds this. So when he does get rid of the drugs in his community, it's just this can of worms opens up, and of course he's now
dragged right into it.
The cartel, and he's dragged deep, and way over his head, and just treading water and trying to thinking naively that him and God can just take down this cartel, which of course,
it's a tough one.
You can imagine where that.
It's a really far-reaching story, like you said. Canada, U.S., Mexico. You got Rosie Perez in this show, that's such a rad connection that she's in it.
She's amazing. She is incredible. I love her so much, man.
She's so great. Yeah,
she is one of the greatest humans I've ever met.
I bet. I'm glad to hear that. It would be really disappointing if you told me otherwise. Actually,
no. I think that Rose has just spent her entire career being grossly underestimated and loving it.
Oh, I can see that.
That woman is so smart. I mean, she worked for the Obama administration. That woman is
crazy. That's
she is so passionate and smart. And when she first got to set, because she played a character from Texas, she wouldn't break her accent. We went out for dinner. She had the Texas accent. And eventually, over time you'd be like, okay, I think you got it. Like, I just want to, can I talk to Rose? Like, you know, and and then eventually, you know, when we got to know each other, and we've been shooting for a long enough time that she was able to go in and out. But on the day when she was working, she stayed in that accent. But we'd socialize and go for dinners or whatever, and you know, I got to know Rose a little bit, and that woman, the stories like the stories of like her and Tupac, and the stories of being on the road with like the Fat Boys, or being on the road with you name it.
Yeah.
You know, like that she has lived a life, man.
She has,
like,
She's one of those people that she could have retired, you know, 10 years ago, and we'd be like, man, she had a career. She's still going. Yeah. God bless her. Yeah. Yeah. It looks amazing.
And let's not forget about, you know, her husband, who's an icon.
Of course.
You know?
Yeah.
I mean, man, didn't he create the Beastie Boys logo? You know what I mean?
Like, exactly. Yeah. You got to keep that in mind. Yeah.
So the show I'm super proud of. That's one of the hardest.
It's still
maybe the hardest I've ever worked. And
how many seasons now?
Only 2.
It's only 2 seasons.
2 6-episode seasons. That's it. That's all that's out right now. I hope we get to do it again.
So you're waiting. You're waiting for the word on 3. Yeah, I imagine this COVID thing has everything in a weird place.
It's a bit weird. You know, we sort of had a new network that had a big. It got bought, so they got rid of everything. So we just basically don't have a home right now. We could go again if we could find a home that would take us.
It's so much like music to me. Like the film industry is like that. If you don't have that cheerleader and that backing, you're kind of on your own. And the one thing about being in a band is I can go, okay, well, fine, we're going to go play at the local club anyway. It's not like you can take the cast of Pure and go, we're going to go play at the local club. It's like, no, there's a whole thing that has to happen.
And it's crazy because, like, critically, that show is so well received and so well acclaimed. You know, there was an article that came out in TV Guide, which was like amazing to me growing up with the actual TV Guide.
Of course.
That, you know, it said, if you loved Ozark, here's like 7 other shows you should watch. And they had wonderfully kind things to say about Pure. And of course, the Breaking Bad comparison gets thrown in there. Like,
that's kind of inaccurate. Actually, I think Ozark is a better, you know, I mean, again, not really, but Ozark is a little bit closer than, say, Breaking Bad to me.
Yeah. I think the Breaking Bad comparison just comes because Bryan Cranston and I look like we could be related.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
You know,
son of Cranston.
Yeah, Uncle Bry.
Mm.
You know, because I'm clean shaven in because I shave with 2 hands.
Well, it's quicker. Yeah. Sounds dangerous, but it's probably quicker. Yeah. Now let's go. Yeah. 2. That sounds dangerous. But let's just jump into Riverdale real quickly, and then let you get on with your life, because I know Riverdale's a massive hit, dude. Like, I'm not as familiar with it as I should be. I started kind of like getting into it. It's hard because you come in like season 3 or 4. Okay, wow. So I'm kind of like, okay, what is this? It's fascinating to me to begin with, because the idea of taking, like, you know, stories that are one kind of story, say like, you know, like the Archie comics, and turning it into a teenage drama to some degree, is like, wow, what a bizarre, and it's basically someone like taking like the original Battlestar Galactica and turning into what it was. That wasn't a full 180 though, you know what I mean? Like, this is a really interesting turn of events, but the fact that it's a hit, and that it's, you know, it's a Netflix show, it's a Netflix original, right? Am I correct on that?
It's a CW original that's on Netflix.
Oh, okay. There you go.
It's a CW and Netflix. So we air.
That's right. You're right.
CW, and then the next day it's available for streaming on
It's
Netflix.
so interesting, this new way of doing things, because I haven't had regular TV in 1,000 years, because I just don't.
You don't need it.
And it's like, so when I see these things, I'm like, wow. But as far reaching as Netflix is, and I think that, you know, it's like a show like that becomes a hit, and then on, like, when you're attached to it, it takes it to a whole other level. But you're like, what's funny to me is it's predominantly made of young, beautiful looking people, and then you get to be in there as the Uncle Frank or Uncle Fred.
Pretty people with pretty problems, or for me, I always think, like, if the Archie story, it's like if the Archie story took place in Twin Peaks.
100%. That's actually
that's
really
how I kind of equate it.
David Lynch's Archie. Yeah.
It's dark. It's
really dark.
It's darky. It's like it
Archie,
is, yeah, because you've got these characters that you've grown up reading about in this, like with the jalopies and pops, and they're still jalopies and they're still pops and they still talk like that, but they also have cell phones. And
yeah.
The
That's
show,
so weird. Yeah.
the show is very confidently bizarre. We know it. We know what we're shooting. It's not a mistake. It is everything that you go, huh? Is every moment of everything is by design, like,
On purpose. Yeah.
because that way you don't really know what to expect. It is not as predictable as you think the show is. It isn't. It just is not.
No.
For my part, when Luke Perry passed away suddenly and tragically, that rocked a lot of us. Luke was he was really kind to me in my career and personally, and we worked together a handful of times, going way back to a TV series called Jeremiah.
That's right. Yeah.
And Luke would come up and he would produce these westerns, and he'd always bring me on, and we got along great. And he's a lovely human. And he passed away, and they introduced this character of his brother Frank, and they came to me, and I was like, yeah, oh God, it felt. I felt like I needed to do it. Like, I just felt like not that I owed it to him. I just wanted to.
Yeah.
I really did. I don't say this often, and I don't say this lightly, but I just felt in my heart of hearts I was the right guy. I don't know. I don't mean that in a narcissistic way. I don't mean that in a like conceited way. It just, in my gut, I felt like it has to be me.
Sure.
Well, it was written for a friend of mine.
Yeah.
And originally I was told I didn't get it. So unbelievably disappointed. So I took this movie, and then it came back around, and this never happens. We called the movie. We're like, this is the situation. Can we get him out of this contract? And
oh, wow.
That never. And they were like, oh, we totally get it. He has to do that. And they let me out of this contract. And I've never heard of that happen. Anyway, so I go, and there's pictures of Luke everywhere. And first day, someone's like, how you feeling? Those are some big shoes to fill. And for whatever reason, the first words out of my mouth were, thankfully, I brought my own shoes. Because I would never try.
No,
and they were really smart to write. My character is Frank, and they wrote Frank to be not like Fred at all. Like, almost the opposite. And Frank was in the military, and Frank is a little PTSD, and he's a hothead, and he's not together at all. And and it also shows where, Archie might have come by his hot-headedness, honestly. And then, within the first time we said the words out loud when we rehearsed, me and KJ Appa, who plays Archie, it was like we just looked at each other, and he gave me this big smile and a nod, and we've been pals ever since.
That's
that
awesome.
first moment. And I pointed out we were shooting this scene when we first meet, and I don't know if people realize that I'm here and he's here, and in between us there's a wall, and there's a portrait of Luke right in the middle of us. And nobody had clocked it until after we shot it. And I was like, oh damn, that was crazy. And it's my favorite location on the Riverdale set, which is the boxing gym.
Well, it's an amazing thing too, because Luke being in that Tarantino movie was such a great, like, wow, dude, like for him to finally get that kind of like massive recognition as far as, at that level of like, someone like of Quentin's, headspace to go, I'm putting Perry in this was so great. It was so great to see him. It's such a tragedy. It's a young man. There's so many young people. It's terrifying, but
I'm especially because I'm not alone. And like, I think anybody who had the fortune to come across Luke in their travels, will all tell you the same thing. I mean, he made everybody feel special. Like, I'm not an anomaly. It's not like he and I were the best of friends, but he sure made you feel that way,
That's awesome.
And just, there was just no arrogance about him. It's funny, those guys, like you think that 90210 show was such a monstrous hit. But
100%.
you know,
Yeah.
getting to know Jason Priestley over the years and getting to know Luke over the years, and I just like two just wonderful, down to earth, just cool guys. And you know, I'm sure they had their ups and downs early in their career. And you see it. It's usually when the kids are early in their careers where they
Sure. Yeah.
they get a little bit of
Yeah.
You know, ego, but that's always covering maybe an insecurity. And I think you get to a point in your life and in your career, which I think you probably agree, you never stop feeling like you're faking it.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
You never completely, no matter how, I don't care how successful you get. I think that there's some part of you that's always thinking someone's going to pull the rug out or expose you as a fraud or something, where it's going to be like, there's somebody better is going to replace me, or they're the insecurities. Like, we don't do this because we're stable people. You know,
hey, you're giving away so much today. It's like, no, it's true. It's there's always a feeling like, but I think that's human. You know, I think you're in the safe zone if you feel that way. If you don't feel that way, like I deserve to be here and I'm great and everybody should just, you know, it's like, then that's a dangerous place to be. And usually those are people who 100% don't feel that way, probably feel less than we feel, as far as like gratitude of being able to have anybody who gives a damn of what I do, you know, or what you do.
You know what the feeling is, though? I think the feeling that differentiates some people from others is what you said, like the gratitude. And like, I fucking love this.
Sure.
I love performing. I love it. I love what I do. I love it. And I'm obsessed with it. And it's like, you know, you lose relationships because of your obsession with your craft or your career, because it means so much to you. And I'm at a stage in my life where I can admit that, like, I love this. I'm obsessed with my job. I'm crazy about it.
It's always one of those funny things, because actors always want to be musicians and musicians always want to be actors, or at least there's some sort of like, at least playing each other's, you know, sandbox that way, you know.
Oh, 100%. And look, I mean, you see it all the time. Actors get to a successful point in their career, and I'm going to put out an album. It doesn't care if it's successful. It's just that it's something that's a bucket list thing they've always wanted to do. Where you get a musician who gets an opportunity to be in a movie. Why not, man? Like, Tom Waits is a hell of an actor.
He really is.
It's
the kind of thing that, honestly, and talking to you, I can't help but think about that particular chapter. And it's what's really interesting to me is suddenly having myself in a position where an acting agent wants me to start going out on things, and I'm like, but I just did that thing horsey as kind of a lark with my friend Ryan and with my baby mama, you know, and it was like, you know, it took me years after the fact to kind of think to myself. I remember sitting in a movie theater in Vancouver watching one of the Underworld movies with Kate Beckinsale and going, man, that one actor sure looks a lot like John Mann from a local Vancouver band called Spirit of the West. And I'm watching the movie and I'm like, every now and again, you know, he was one of the main villains in the film. And I keep going, man, that guy looks like John Mann from Spirit of the West. And then afterwards I'm going, that was John Mann from Spirit of the West. And I thought to myself, if I had played my cards right when in the topsy-turvy world of showbiz, maybe I could have went, instead of like, you know, coming off a tour and having to go, I don't know, do a job, I could have went like, maybe I should go read for some stuff. I don't know. I don't think I was really as comfortable. And watching you guys do it, especially, you know, watching you, it's one thing to watch, you know, when you watch something and then you see a friend and it takes you right out of it. I never get that feeling with you. I'm always like, hey, I didn't know, you know, Ryan was from Alabama. You know, it's like, the accent is always solid, or a Mennonite, you know, like, and it's always like, wow, it's that kind of commitment to and having that kind of passion and ambition within that world. I kind of feel like that should be left to them. I don't want someone operating on me who is not 100% into being a doctor. You know what I mean? It's like, so I don't want to watch films with people who aren't necessarily. That said, the day you decide to direct and you need that guy to go, I don't know, he went that way. I'm your guy. You know, I've been joking about, I don't really want to be an actor. I want to be a reenactor. You know, when they do those stories and it's kind of like, in 1995, and they'll be all voiceover and there'll be me in the background going like, you know, I could do that. I think.
I did one of those kind of things, like a sort of, it was cool. It's this series, it's on Netflix. It's called Real Detective, not True Detective. It's called Real Detective.
Yeah.
And
I've seen that.
It is, they interview the actual officer, the actual detective, but then they reenact it like it's actual, like a real film shoot, as opposed to the reenactment style shoots.
Sure.
And I got to play this guy.
Was there dialogue and stuff like you're doing?
Oh, it was a full like.
Okay,
it's like an episode of a TV. It's like a TV series episode.
Okay, cool.
But you've also got the real guy talk. He's the one talking about it. He's the one narrating it.
Wow.
Or she,
Right.
in some cases, and it was like, I did one. Michael Madsen did one. Devin Sawa, Zoe Palmer.
I gotta check that out.
Tom O'Pennicott did one. Did Max Martini? Anyway, there was like it was a good group. Like I think Michael Madsen, I think maybe did one of the early ones.
Cool.
But it was an amazing experience. Then you get to talk to this detective about the case, and you're just like, what?
I bet. Yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, those were
true crime has really found its nadir at this point. I think with the COVID especially, it's all like, let's sit down and watch murder. You know, it's horrible things and just sit there and blindly stare.
Yeah, while we're inside our homes, let's watch shows about home invasions.
I know, it's like
sweet dreams.
We just watched the Night Stalker documentary, and I'm like, I'm up checking all the windows, and I'm like, fuck this, man, no way. Well, my friend, I am so happy we got to hang out. I only wish it was in person. It's just this whole thing has gone on long enough as far as I'm concerned. How does this work for you now? You are working currently, right? Like you are still like.
Yeah, I was just filming a movie away for about a month.
Where were you?
With just the interior of BC.
Oh, okay.
It was just the location and the film was a small town. It was a film I did with Scott Eastwood and Mel Gibson and Kevin Durant.
Great! Wow.
Famke Janssen, and it was good. It was
a
good time. So we did that.
I'd be sitting there with all my like autograph book with all those people. Hey, Famke, you know.
Yeah.
It's like totally Chris Farling about X-Men or something. You know.
That's the hard part is trying to like when I did.
Yeah. Don't take advice from me. Yeah.
X-Men. It's like sitting in the tent with Gillian Anderson and David Duchovny and Mitch Pileggi, and you're just like, it'd be cool. Just don't talk. Just don't say anything.
No, I know.
You'll be fine.
Yeah, exactly.
Don't speak unless you're spoken to, and you'll be fine. It made it really. I was in the hair and makeup trailer, and they're listening to rock music, and we're laughing and joking. And then Jillian came in, and all of a sudden the music changed to like meditation music, and it got dead quiet. And I was like, "What's going on?" They're like, "Oh, Jillian just helps you get in the zone. She, she likes this is the music she likes, whatever." I was like, "This is what Jillian likes. What about what I like?" I look across at Jillian, and she just looks at me with these like daggers, and I'm like, "I'm dead. I'm fired. I'm dead." And then this sly little grin, and I was like, "Oh, her sense of humor! Like I just couldn't."
Amazing.
She's so good. She's so good, man. Like
she's the best. Yeah.
Watch anything that woman does.
The Crown just recently was nuts. Yeah.
She's incredible, and she's so cool. Like.
That's awesome.
That was such a good time. Anyway, I could go on and on with stories.
But I'm glad to see you're working. That's what I'm trying to get to. You're doing something. And so, I mean, the industry is sort of quietly kind of working or opening up to some degree, which is the music industry, not so much. At least, well, we're recording and writing and doing things like that. But actually doing a show is not going to happen for a while. But I'm glad to see quite a few of my friends, doing stuff in the film industry and television industry.
That first gig back. How epic that's going to be.
Yeah.
It's going to be weird. It'll be weird, huh?
It's going to be weird. I'm almost kind of like, I'm assuming I'm just going to rely on muscle memory and like riding a bike. But there's a part of me that kind of goes like, oh yeah, I do this. That's right. This is what I do. It's kind of like, I've been calling it, and everybody's heard me call it retirement practice, just kind of hanging around the house.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah, it's like this. So this is what retirement's like. It's not so bad. There's times where I get itchy and I'm kind of like, but I'm always pretty good at compartmentalizing sort of like, well, we just can't do that right now. So just put that out of your mind. And when it'll present itself, the phone's going to ring, the bat signal's going to go up, and it's time to go. You know what I mean? And that's what I'm working.
Well, hopefully they give you enough notice, because it's going to take you at least a week to dust off all those instruments.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, dust off. I got to dust off the knees, my man. I got to start getting
How many guitars are not in the image that I'm seeing?
a lot.
Do you know how many? Do you know how many you have?
I don't
You
know.
you don't
I
have to tell
honestly,
me.
there's a storage unit that has a bunch of other stuff that I keep going, hey, where's that one? I gotta go out and like do a whole process of like going through cases and going. Luckily, as I got smarter, I started labeling things as to what it was what. So I said, oh, okay. But it's kind of become ridiculous, and at some point, it's time to start downscaling.
But your favorites are always going to be your favorites, though.
Exactly, and I wouldn't even say some of them are here. They just kind of like just randomly switch them out. Oh, I forgot I had this, and they hang it up, and then you play. They got an upright bass there. It's nuts. It's
Yeah,
it's
that's
nonstop.
awesome.
Yeah, but my friend, I'm so happy to see you. I wish you all the best in 2021. I'm assuming it's going to be busy when it. I'm sure you're busy already. So, but when I get back up there, we're to
Yes.
It would be nice to cross paths, or maybe we'll cross paths in Sydney, Australia again. You never know.
It would be. Oh my God, that'd be amazing. Traveling would be amazing.
I know. Someday.
I'd tell you some stuff, but all those crazy NDAs they make you sign these days.
I know. I'm always excited to see what you got coming up because part of me doesn't want to know. I just want to kind of like stumble upon it and go, I know that guy.
Yeah, I think I'm booked up for the next couple months anyway, next 2 months. So
well, when we'll do a part 2, and then when I see what exciting things have happened, then we can talk about it.
I may be in Winnipeg this spring filming, so I'll have to FaceTime you or something from Winnipeg. And
please do. Well, thank God you're there in the spring. You don't want to be there now. Although I've heard it's been pretty mild.
I filmed a movie called Reasonable Doubt with Sam Jackson there in the winter, and it was like, whew,
it's real deal. Yeah. Hey, West Coast guy, here. Welcome to winter.
What do they say? There's 2 seasons in Winnipeg, winter and July.
Yeah, 100%. That's how it is. But I say, I'm so excited. We doing an indie film together 30 years ago. I don't even know what the math is on it, but it's a long time ago. And now seeing you actually doing this is, and having a career and being successful, I'm very proud of you.
Well, likewise, we talk about this. I think we're living vicariously through each other with our sub dreams.
I think so. Yeah. Like I said, at some point we'll just kind of do a Freaky Friday, and they'll be like, why did Ryan forget how to act? Because he's Todd now.
Because he's Todd now. Yeah.
All right, brother. I love you, and have an amazing downtime.
Yeah. Thanks, man. We'll see you soon.
Bye.